We're going to be covering how to do a HAPSITE board reset. Oftentimes you'll know you need to do a board reset if either your instrument is restarting randomly or it's freezing up without cause. To do this procedure, we're going to need a couple different things. We're going to need two different Phillips head screwdrivers. One, the larger one, is going to be for all the outside screws, while this smaller Phillips head screwdriver is going to be for the inside screws. I have something to sort of grab the screws if I lose them or drop them in the case. That can be a real big annoyance for this process. It doesn't have to be this. You can have something like tweezers or a magnetic tool just to kind of reach those drop screws. Lastly, I have a couple storage bins. This is just to keep track of everything as I move along. Let's get started. The first thing that you're going to need to be doing is have the instrument off anytime you work on the HAPSITE. Next up, we need to take the probe off of the HAPSITE ER. The LEMO port, which is the silver one, just pulls straight out, while the beige sample port is going to unscrew and then pull off. Immediately after that, there's a couple other things that are holding the outside casing to the HAPSITE. They look like black O-rings. There's going to be two of those at the probe, and then one of them in the back at the Ethernet port. These might be a little bit tricky to unscrew the first time you do it. Next up, we're going to drop down the front panel of the HAPSITE. Once the front panel is dropped down, there's 5 screws that run across the top of the front panel. You can see them across here. There's one screw that you're not going to touch, and that's going to be to the upper left-hand corner of your nitrogen canister. This screw right here. I'll quickly take those out. Once those screws are going to be removed, we now are going to take the 7 screws of this portion of the HAPSITE off. This is where the probe usually sits. These are set screws, so you don't expect them to pull fully out, but they will pop out and loosen up there. Once the screws at the top are removed, we're going to flip the HAPSITE up and over, and we're going to remove 10 screws that hold the bottom plate of the HAPSITE to the casing. With the screws removed from the HAPSITE, we can now take this top casing and we're going to bend it over so that we can access the boards that sit toward the back of the HAPSITE case. This can be attached pretty tightly to the inside of the case, and so it might not be able to first time bend all the way where you need it to, so I have a box to rest it on. The boards that we're going to want to access sit right here in the back left-hand side of the HAPSITE. There are 4 screws holding this bracket over top of those boards to sort of keep them in place. What we're going to do is remove these 4 screws, and then we're simply going to unseat and then reseat the boards. When I'm removing the screw, I'm going to do this one last. It's the hardest to access. It sits next to a black sort of piece of plastic. If this is the last screw, it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of unscrew it. There's not going to be as much tension on it. Now with our top bracket removed, we can simply unseat and then reseat these boards. There's a few cables that are attached to those boards. It's not going to be necessary to detach those cables first. So simply pull up the board until it comes out of its slot, and you can push it back down into that slot. You may want to wait a few seconds, perhaps 5 seconds before you re-slot it in there, but that's a board replacement in a nutshell. There are a few chips that are attached to the printed circuit board on the back of here, occasionally those chips actually pop out and come loose. So if you want to apply just a little bit of a pressure to the chips that are sort of in the right side of that printed circuit board, and if they pop back in place, that could also fix your issue. Now that our board reset is complete, we're going to put everything back together in the opposite order that we took it apart and check that our HAPSITE is still turning on and working properly.